I was just pulling up a presentation that I might do a little bit of jazz on about pre-implantation ethics, about ethics of pre-implantation genetic diagnosis screenings. Basically, when you uh, remove an egg, fertilize it, and then you can screen it for like autism, other type of disabilities. The ethics of that, essentially. I'm an antinatalist slash EFIList, more an EFIList than antinatalist. So I believe that like in certain routes it may be necessary to have reproduction in the future. Either way, it is an interesting conversation, regardless of antinatalism. Um, to have a conversation about ethics of pre-implantation, just because it is a topic that will be very prominent in the future. So if you want to dump any questions or join, feel free to do that. Otherwise, I might do a screen share here in a bit. And yeah. Screen share tips. Screen share is easiest for 2 monitors. It's probably true, but I'm going to, I guess, use my phone as the other monitor. Cool. I'll just use my phone instead of monitor. Screen share. Bing, bang, boom. StreamYard. Perfect. How this works. Nope, that won't work. I wonder if I can give myself a shareable link. Anybody with a link? Copy link. And paste them. There we go. Awesome. Cool. There we go. Yo, hopefully more people join. Yeah, hopefully more people will join. That'd be awesome. But either way, it should work fine. I'll post it on my channel and on my Facebook group, so people will see it probably. Either way, post upload. It's just really a little bit of a shame if like you're the only person that can ask questions directly. But either way, it'll be a good thing to go with. Ethics of pre-implantation genetic diagnosis screening by Brandt, myself, and then Jacob and Veronica did this project like a year ago. Background: so in vitro implantation fertilization is the process of removing the eggs from the ovaries and fertilizing them in a lab environment. The embryo is then grown for 2 to 6 days before being implanted into a uterus. Genetic diagnosis screening is a process of screening for conditions such as Down syndrome, sickle cell anemia, or any other diseases or conditions that one can have detected in their DNA/genetics. Eugenics is the idea that people might attempt to improve the genetic gene pool of humans. A lot of people have issues with eugenics and the terms eugenics. They believe it's essentially either racist or ableist of some nature, and in general, it's just about the terms of improving the human gene pool, which can be bad or good depending on why people are motivated to do that. Some positions, naturalists. It is unnatural for us to control the traits of embryos, so we should not, which would be against the screening and of embryos. Antinatalists, which would say existence is net suffering for everyone, so everyone is better off not coming into existence. Not necessarily all antinatalists would have that position. It's more of utilitarian antinatalists would have that position, but for the purposes of the class and not wanting to scrunch have so many words on a slide, we just summed it up as that for antinatalists for the moment. Utilitarians, people without disabilities will be happy and more productive for society, so we should screen for disabilities and prevent implementations. So that before, as utilitarian people would essentially say that generating happiness is the most important thing, and people with disabilities in general are more happy if they don't have a disability of being able to see art and appreciate art, generally speaking, is a good thing. Things of that nature. Probably could have did better definition for antinatalists, but I was new to antinatalism at the time, so this is about 2 years later, a year and a half later, so I could have had a better definition for antinatalism, but at the time, that was what I kind of was thinking antinatalism's primary thing was negative utilitarianism, a zero-sum game, a Benatarian argument. But now I think antinatalism is more just general anti-procreative, ethics in general. So, there's many reasons to be an antinatalist, but I thought it was more just a Benatarian argument, essentially, the zero-sum game argument that Mendham talks about. Genetic diagnosis screening camps. The right to design the best lives for children is one camp, versus who are we to say what is best for the child? The camp of the subjectivists that all them good folks, versus social diversity and its value. We should try to accommodate rather than eliminate, which we'll get into in a little bit here. Arguments for screenings. Parents' rights. Obviously, I don't really care for that too much as an antinatalist, but it was worth bringing up in the presentation. The rights of parents to want to design and raise a child of their own choosing. Disabled lives have more restricted lives, so they have less opportunity, which would mean less happiness or well-off lives. So that would be an argument for screening. You try to screen against having those disabilities in your child. Parental responsibilities. A parent should do what's best for their child and try to maximize their child's opportunities. So you should try to screen against disorders. The nature of disease is harm, so to remove them is a good thing inherently. Pain reduction is a good thing inherently, so a child and parent would essentially suffer less if they didn't have the disabilities. The child would not, we'll get to more to that in future slides, but the child would suffer less and the parent would have way less difficulty raising a normal child rather than someone that has a disability. It's natural evolution / natural selection selects for advantages and circumstances, so it's natural for us to desire the same. I'm not 100% sure if I agree with it, but it was a point that we kind of felt like bringing up, that natural selection for one's environment is a natural thing that occurs, and we've kind of stepped out of the natural bounds of evolution and natural selection. So kind of enacting it in a way of selecting for things that would be naturally selected for, instead of having the brutality of it, within nature, but instead we're just selecting it, in labs, so there's no actual harm being done to people. I feel like that's a pro. Rip, he ducked out. Or she ducked out. I don't know. Kaz ducked out. Uh, oh, my mic might have been fucked the whole entire time I've been talking here. I have no clue if my mic has been fucked the whole time, but if it has, I'm sorry. Hopefully, reading on screen was Gucci enough to understand the main points. You know, case one. In adults with autism spectrum disorder, generally IQ did not predict well-being nor friendship. However, measures of motion and behavior were revealed to IQ in varied directions. Higher IQs and autism spectrum disorder were associated with greater levels of depressive symptoms and negative emotions, and lower levels of positive emotions and well-being, as well as relatively worse adaptive skills across the group. Lower IQ was associated with high levels of hyperactivity and irritability, basically meaning they had like hyper emotions, particularly revealed to the uh, ever antisocial, autism spectrum disorder. A lower IQ group. It is important to note that the effects of IQ in these various cases may be quite different. A higher intellectual ability may offer a greater ability to self-reflect, frustration, and regulate frustration, more opportunities to be frustrated by new challenges, or afford an individual the ability to report negative feelings in comparison to those of lower levels of IQ who will struggle with employment and independence. Basically, it's to note that, like, essentially, if you have autism, and you're really high functioning, you will have more levels of depressive symptoms, like 50% of the time. But it's to also duly noted that they can also express their negative feelings more than someone of low IQ who has autism spectrum disorder. So you have to kind of take it with a grain of salt to some extent or another. But at the same time, it is reported that if you have lower IQ and have autism spectrum disorder, you will have higher levels of happiness. But at the same time, there's the cost of you're going to struggle with employment and you'll have to be taken care of. Essentially, you won't be independent. So your happiness will come at the cost of other people's time, essentially, and potentially happiness as well. Um, so yeah, imagine you're the mother or father of a child, and for which a child in vitro fertilization, the doctor tells you and your partner that the developing embryo has been screened positive for autism spectrum disorder. All you need to do is ask the doctor to terminate the embryo, and you could try again for an able child. What might be problematic, if anything, in terminating the embryo? Oh, you're still here. Awesome, awesome. Uh, Yeah, I mean, I guess I can. Usually, when I was doing the presentation, I would leave it up to the class at this point to leave it up to the class to answer that question. You're the only person here, so I guess I could pose it to you if you're up to answering that. Um, but yeah, I mean, obviously for me, I would terminate the embryo. I mean, there's no point to having taking that 50-50 risk, in my opinion. Like, you're basically taking a huge gamble that in either way it's a lose. I mean, in my opinion, like, if they're high functioning autism, there's a 50% chance it'll have depressive symptoms, which is a huge gamble. And then if they're low functioning, they'll be happier than the average person or about average, but you're going to have a real difficult time raising them, and they're not going to be functional or independent in any way. So, I mean, what do you think? I mean, in terms of like ethics of that, I mean, I'm a consequentialist, so I think, as was we briefly mentioned in here, I'm a negative utilitarian. So essentially, I believe kind of the opposite of this right here. People with disability. Well, this I believe what this says, but for like slightly opposite reasons. Instead of it producing more happiness in society, it would think I'm a negative utilitarian, so I think we should not have disabilities because it would reduce more suffering to not have people with disabilities. And then the antinatalists obviously would be against all types of reproduction of any sort, including in vitro. This is just a 20-sided die that I'm throwing around. I mean, I've seen a documentary on autism, and it didn't seem really bad, both for them and the caretakers, I'm guessing, careers. Yeah, I mean, I know people who have autism spectrum disorder, and it's really difficult on the parents, and I mean, the children themselves have struggled with, like, friends and stuff of that nature. So yeah, it's rough. People with autism have it rough. They don't understand what's going on 100% of the time if they're low functioning, and that can be confusing and scary. And then if you're high functioning, well, I had a friend, a real close friend, who had autism spectrum disorder, along with various other mental disorders, and they ended up taking their own life a few months ago. So it's one of those things where, like, you if you're high functioning in autism spectrum disorder, you often like loathe yourself. So it's a hard all disorders are difficult, but it's one of those ones where, like, even if you're high functioning, it's not easy. But if the condition or risk of it is bad enough, it's probably warranted. Indeed. Yeah. So more of the story is I highly advocate for in vitro fertilization. If people are going to have a child, that they do screenings, and if they find out their child will have autism, I recommend that they don't have the child. Just because, I mean, if it's low functioning, they're going to be not independent. They're not going to know what's going on in the world. They're not going to be moral agents. They're basically just going to be slightly more intelligent, like animals. Like, I mean, we're animals also, but like in the sense that they're not moral agents, that they'll have their intelligence limited to like that of like like a not an infant, but like a young child, even as an adult. And like crows have the intelligence of young children. So I'm just saying, like, it's crows aren't moral agents, and anything that's stuck at the intelligence of a young child isn't a moral agent. And so, I mean, I wouldn't bring someone that's not a moral agent into the world just to suffer and go through like this hellscape for no reason. So that's why I'm against bringing like people with autism spectrum disorder into the world, because frankly, if it's low intelligence, it's basically just bringing a being that's going to suffer in here for no reason. They're not going to be able to contribute. They're just going to suffer and then inevitably die. And then if you are high intelligence, well, yeah, you're going to be probably depressed and hyper aware of certain social bullshit, and you're going to be very empathetic, and that'll tear you apart. So, yeah, moral story is if you're going to have a kid, please screen your children. Discussion 1. All you need to do is ask the doctor to terminate embryo, blah, blah, blah. How much stakes does the child have in their child's well-being? How much suffering from the parent makes it ethical to not implant a genetically disabled child? How bad would the child need to suffer to be better off non-existent? Those are some questions that you might want to ask yourself, basically. How much suffering from the parent makes it ethical to not implant a genetically disabled child, and how bad would it need to be for the child themselves to be better off non-existent? A lot of people say that like that's not a choice that we can make, but I mean, I'm a consequentialist, so I felt it was worth to add that into the conversation for our slides, just because, you know, I feel like there is no level of suffering is acceptable in my opinion. None. Like there shouldn't be a world with any level of suffering. But most people don't necessarily agree with that. So I was just going to pose this to the class. Like, surely if you agree suffering is a bad thing, then at some point there is like a level of suffering that it's like the life is objectively bad. Like if it, like, you know, so like at what point is like for the average person, you know, for me it's like a single pinprick is enough to make like a life not worth living, like in an egoistic sense. But for the average person, I was just posing to the class like how much suffering would need to be in a person's life to make it not worth it, and to consider disability, disabled people, and if it's just worth it to bring them into existence, you know, essentially. So that's what we were basically talking about in this slide right here. Debriefing number 1. Most people are generally net happy, so it's more often than not ethical to not destroy. So, sorry. Most people, debriefing 1. Most people in general are net happy, so it is more often than not ethical to not destroy the embryo. Add source. We forgot to add source, I guess. Morally acceptable if the mother doesn't want morally acceptable if the mother doesn't want to be a mother. Problematic if the parent doesn't want to be a child. Blah blah blah. Standard review. We cannot speak of the child because we don't know what's best for them. Yeah, this is Jacob's slide. Jacob's not an antinatalist, so he kind of a little bit doesn't do antinatalism justice here, but fair enough. Antinatalists might say anything is not worth existing. Utilitarians might say that we should prefer people with more opportunities to succeed. So show IQ, basically what I was just talking about. The brief slide is basically just going over what we just talked about in like a brief summary. Arguments against screening. This is where I was in charge of this slide, and I was just ripping it apart as I went, because I was just like, you know, these are the arguments against screaming, guys. Like, fucking, they're wrong. Oh, this argument pissing me off. The non-identity argument. Because the person does not exist, it cannot be better or worse for them to come into existence. You know, that's just it's a non-being, bro. This is like the classic argument you'll see people like try to go against David Benatar saying like essentially like the whole asymmetry like relies on the fact that like non-existent beings are in a neutral or better off state for not existing, and a bunch of people will basically just be like, well, you're trying to talk about a being that doesn't exist, so like you're not even having a proper conversation, bro. Like, despite the fact that people clearly buy like things expecting to have children in advance, so it's like we clearly like have these analogies in our mind and like prepare for things in the future. Like we prepare for things in the future with good certainty that they will occur, you know. So it's like I don't get why the non-identity thing is even, you know, the thing, but people apparently believe it's a good argument. It would simply be a person with this there without any blah blah blah. Person with autism for autism spectrum disorder. Yeah, impairment is not a disability is another argument. Yeah, this is fun. Disability is a systemic environmental issue. It is a normative claim. You should be like this. So basically saying that you're not actually disabled if you're blind. You're not actually disabled if you have like a crippled leg and you can like barely move and have to be like in a wheelchair. It's just the fact that society isn't built to be completely around you. You're not disabled. You're just not living in utopia world that is bent around your very will. Yup. This is an actual argument. Like people believe that like if we were in a utopia world, like, you know, the fact that you're blind shouldn't matter. You would be just as happy as everybody else. But the fact is that because we're not in utopia world, you know, like they're not actually disabled. It's a systematic issue, you know. So I think it's bullshit. I mean, some people buy into that, I guess, and are like, you know, you're not actually disabled. If you have an issue, it's just the environment. Hey man, if you can't if you can't thrive in your environment normally, I'd say that is a definition of a disability, or a mental illness, or whatever. You know, that's literally what it means to be mentally ill. Is like you have something in your brain that is like essentially impairing your ability to function normally, and you know, and it's become problematic for you. And you know, that's quite literally what it is. Yeah, like sure, if like everybody, it's like they're saying basically like a schizophrenic isn't actually mentally ill so long as like they're happy, and everybody compensates for their mental illness and makes it so like they're not harming themselves or anybody else. Therefore, they're not mentally ill. That's basically what that argument is, but for disabilities. So it's just some silly Billy bullshit, but you know, hey, it's an argument against screening, so we brought it up. And I think a couple of our people in our group completely buy into that because I don't know, they're good Christian folk that don't think we can judge. They're like, only God can judge. So you know, I go to a Catholic college, by the way. So yeah, yeesh, it fucking sucks. Um, Opportunity equals, this doesn't equal well-being nor happiness. Many individuals are abled and not happy, which is true, and I think it's basically, if you objectively look at life, no life is good either way. So that's a strong argument for why, that's the strongest argument so far for why we shouldn't care either way. Many individuals are happy and disabled, which is true on a subjective scale, but then again, I think objectively, all life is horrible. So I don't necessarily think the subjective scale should be taken into account very much. I think it's very heavily biased, and evolution will basically make it so anybody that's surviving will pretty much be happy so long as their chemical imbalances are right. Like, so long as you have your happy chemicals pumping because you're alive and you eat food and your brain goes, ooh, he consumed calories, he happy now, ooh hoo. And then the monkey chemicals go, and then you're like, life is great despite the fact that I haven't eaten anything of sufficient nutrients for like 3 weeks straight, you know, and I'm been hunted by like fucking like polar bears in the Arctic or some shit. Like quite literally, like people will feel happy so long as their basic needs are being satisfied. It's hard for a lot of people to accept that claim that all lives are bad. It really is hard for people to accept that claim that all lives are bad. I mean, I know people in the antinatalist and EFIList community that even then they don't think necessarily that all lives are bad. Like they actually think that like my life is good because I live in America and stuff. Comparatively speaking, my life is amazing. I'm probably living better than 90% of people in the world, you know? Like America has a lot of privileges, and I'm more privileged than a lot of people in America itself. So I don't disagree that like comparatively speaking, I am like happier than a lot of people and have like a better life. But it's like, yeah, no lives are good though. It's like we're all just fighting it. We're all just need machines, like creating artificial values that have no real value. And we're basically just exploiting other beings, tearing them apart, you know, to keep ourselves alive. And their pain has just as much value as our own pain. And as Schopenhauer said, you know, the lion tearing apart the gazelle, like what is worse, what has more value there, essentially, the gazelle being torn apart or the lion's satiation of hunger and pleasure, like taste pleasure, like what is like generating more value in those moments, and it's clearly the pain of like the animal. So yeah, it's like I don't get how people don't understand that like life is inherently bad for everybody. It's just like this just pain game and need machine game. But hey, I mean, somehow just bypasses people's brains. I don't fucking get it, man. But I mean, hey, it didn't click till someone, I guess, like a literal philosopher, like explained it in like lectures and shit to me. Not to me, but like to people, and I listened in like through YouTube and stuff. But I guess like, hey, I mean, yeah, I just like I can explain to people and it just doesn't seem to click in their brains. So it's like I don't know what's the difference between me that made it click when I heard it and other people when they hear it from me and it doesn't click. But fuck, you know, yeah, it's difficult to convey. Happiness, emotional states. Parents have an obligation to satisfy their child's basic rights, not to provide opportunity for ableness. So that was the final objection, which parents have an obligation to satisfy their children's basic needs. Meaning, like, even if you have a disabled child, essentially you're just obligated to compensate for the disabilities, not necessarily to make sure your child is able. That was like the other counter argument. I, as was previously said before, disagree. We should try to make it so that your child can be independent at some point. Not that you should have like the intention of like having your child become independent, because obviously if you bring a child into the world you have complete obligations to satisfy their needs until they die, basically, in my opinion. Like that, there's no justification for bringing a child into existence. So if you do bring a child into existence, you have to take care of them, basically. So, but that being said, if the child wants to become independent, they should have also the ability to become independent. Hence why, you should have an able child, in my opinion. But next slide, because we've been on that one for a while. Arguments against continued. Oh shit, I forgot that they really hammered on the arguments against, because they really didn't want to be sounding like we were pro eugenics. Yeah, fair enough. Social diversity. Problems associated with disabilities are socially imposed. Uh, Thoughts, though, that the life of someone with disability is forever disrupted, and that of the individual experience isolation, poverty, and lack of great opportunities, dissatisfaction from disability, but rather social disparities. Um, Basically, just saying that like people aren't sad because they're blind. People aren't sad because their like legs like they're harder for them to walk or something. They're sad because of the implications of the disability that like happens from society. Like if society didn't treat blind people like as though there was a problem with them, then blind people wouldn't really care either way, because they don't know what sight is, essentially. So that was like that argument. I disagree with it again. I think that like being able to appreciate art, being able to appreciate all that like other stuff objectively, probably makes people feel a little bit happier than being like, oh shit, everybody else around me can like is talking about how they can like do this thing, but I cannot do this thing. That, I mean, like, it just seems like having a lack of abilities just seems, I don't know, like, after I found out platypuses had the ability to fucking like sense like electromagnetic things with their fucking bill, and like understand like the North Pole, like and all that fucking directional shit, and there's like echolocation and stuff. Like, I wish I had those abilities. It's not like I'm necessarily like majorly impaired by not having those abilities per se, but if I was evolutionarily designed to be able to have those and was intended to have those things, just as sight is intended for humans, yeah, it would be very much a disadvantage. Yeah, exactly. I think it's a disadvantage. You say, yeah, fuck yeah. we're in agreement. Gaps in employment, education, etc. Basically, so yeah, basically they're saying like, oh, the whole reason like there's gaps in employment with people who can't see is because we're being biased against people that can't see. And I'm like, yeah, I guess technically we are, but that's because they fucking can't see. They don't know what the fuck is going on. Same with like someone with autism. It's just like, yeah, there's like, if they're low functioning of autism, there's gonna be, issues with employment, but that's because they quite literally are socially inept, and that's, not their problem. And it's certainly not, it is their problem, but this is not their fault. It's their parents' fault, which is the whole point of this like presentation, like saying like, like this parent's duty to like prevent this from happening. But yeah, like it is quite literally, in my opinion, like it's logical that there should be issues with employment. It's just capitalism. I mean, it's fucked up, but the world's fucked up. So it's just kind of like, why should we put more pressure and weight on other people when we could just not create the situation to have the fire being, like, as Gary says, like, why create a system of firefighters when you could, in theory, just not have any fires be created to begin with, So that's kind of like how I'm looking at that. Rather than accommodate individuals' impairments, we would be reducing and restricting in-person selective abortion, decreasing population disabled, increasing resources for disabled, seen as burdens, and not taking on the considered gift development, example prodigies. Yeah, it's basically just more BS saying that, like, like there could be some disabled person that's like a prodigy, like what if scenarios and all that shit. It's just silly Billy arguments, but they're arguments nonetheless, so we included them in the presentation. But yeah, one of the gifted people, like Stephen Hawking, for example, he had ALS, which is like one of the most crippling, horrible fucking diseases. It pretty much entombs you in your own body, turns you into like a living sarcophagus. He was estimated to die like after 3 years of his diagnosis, but he ended up surviving for like way past that until he was 55. And he's quoted, when you are faced with possibilities of an early death, it makes you realize that life is worth living, and there are a lot of things you want to do. I mean, to me, it is inspiring, quote unquote, and all that shit, to be like, oh wow, like a disabled person wants to live and all that, blah blah blah. But when you're really deeply in tune with like what evolution is, and you understand like what evolution is like meant to do, like it's just about reproduction. It's just about literally persevere as much as you can so that you can reproduce. So yeah, like it makes sense. Like he was persevering, and he was compensated for because he had a brilliant brain, so he wasn't going through like the worst of it. And he felt like he had meaning to his life because of these artificial goals of like being like, oh, I'm an astronomer and I discovered black holes and that's important, blah blah blah. I mean, it's cool. I have massive respect for Stephen Hawking, but at the same time, it's like, what's the objective value of learning about a black hole? There is none. The only objective value is that pain is bad and experience generates value. How's it going, Marco? And so, yeah, now he wants to curl in my lap. How's it going, big boy? Anyways, Stephen Hawking, I respect what he did for the world in terms of scientific discoveries and stuff, but I don't necessarily think scientific discoveries objectively have value. They can help, there's certain discoveries that were fundamentally crucial, like evolution, fundamentally crucial to understanding like the nature of the world. Some of physics and like understanding that like how the world came about is just chaos and not necessarily like a god. That is fundamental. But then when it comes to like certain discoveries, like it's just like, that's pretty cool and stuff. But like I wouldn't say like it's worth suffering through ALS for multiple years and being like, you know, it was worth bringing this being that's gonna suffer, you know. I think you get what you're saying. Yeah, that's great. I'll move on then. Case two, discussion two. Is this person fully happy? Is Stephen Hawking well off? Do you think the question itself, should we screen for and prevent genetic disabilities, is ethical to raise? Does asking the question not imply that individuals with disabilities are somehow worse off or less valuable than fully able people? Basically, just asking like, is it even ethical to ask the question? Which I basically think it is. I mean, like obviously, based on my previous answers, it's definitely worth discussing at the very minimum. But I think there's very serious concerns. Um, Number three, how would this affect people's self worth? How would you feel knowing you had been selected by your parents rather than born by chance? How would you feel if your parents allowed you to be born with a disability? Personally, I feel like it would be good to be selected. I mean, to know that your parents genuinely wanted you to be like the way you are, essentially, like wouldn't be that be good to know that your parents wanted you to be like you, rather than like, you know, it's just you turned out how you turned out and they have to accept that, I guess. I mean, or if they don't like that, you know, you will never know, but you know for sure that they wanted you the way that you are if you were born selected. So how would you feel if your parents allowed you to be born disabled? uh I would be upsetty spaghetti if I was blind and knowing that there's people literally crying because they look at like art, and when they're tripping balls on like LSD or something, like they see like a visual that's so beautiful it moves them to like tears and like never leaves their mind their whole life, and is like a story they can constantly tell. And, you know, being blind would just be like, well, I have no fucking clue what you're even talking about, bro. Like, what even is a visual pattern? What does it even mean? so, so yeah, I mean, I feel like there are so many things you can miss out on if you're disabled that, yeah, I would be upset if I knew that there was an option to have me not be brought into existence, which would not be depriving me of anything. Well, at the same time, you know, they could have brought me into existence, selected to be like, I don't know, like a fucking athlete that also has like 150 IQ the and you know a really good, you know, eyesight and, you know, preppy personality that makes me like really uppity and happy all the time rather than depressive. So yeah, I would very much like would want to have like myself selected for like traits that would benefit me rather than to be like, you know, the scrawny ass depressed boy that I am right now. So this is just a debriefing. I'm gonna skip the debriefing. Oh, that's it. Well, then we're not going to skip the review thing. We'll go over that. Well-being sources. Due to non-identity problem, we can see that Hawking is as happy as he can be, even if he can be. He even says life is worth living, so take opportunities away would be not ethical. That's the well-being look at it. All discussion is worth having, but screening does imply that able individuals are in some way better off slash more valuable. This is something that proponents would need to resolve in their own to their own worldview. And we don't have any hard and fast from this reading. This is just important factors to think about and considering possibilities. Basically, just a debriefing, basically saying that, like, hey guys, we're not taking any hard stances here. We're just displaying information. The whole time that I was doing the presentation, I was just like, antinatalism, like these beings are suffering. But, you know, everybody else was just kind of like, you know, the other two presenters were just doing their own thing. But I appreciate their help, and, you know, we did a great job. We got like pretty good. I think we got like full credit on the assignment in the end. So we're pretty much close to full credit. But yeah, we got sources here. Let's pull up some of these actually, now think about it. Why not? If I close that, will that do anything to the stream? Yeah, it will do that, but let's screen share one more time. Boom. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Sure. Longitudinal data suggests non-functioning adults referred for possible autism as children are sparse and possible differed from the database. A total of 123 young adults. Potential individuals who never received an antisocial, never individual, blah, blah. In many ways, the never autism spectrum disorder group had similar outcomes compared to the autism spectrum group. However, lower well-being and fewer positive emotions were related to autism spectrum disorder diagnosis across IQ, and the ever autism spectrum disorder lower IQ group had the highest levels of irritability, hyperactivity, and medications. Families played a major role in supporting adults with and without autism spectrum disorder at all intellectual levels, realistic ways of increasing blah, blah, blah. Basically just saying that, like, they did have issues and were, like, had lower levels of happiness. And there's, like, the actual article that I don't have access to anymore, basically went into a little bit more details on that. Let's see. Oh, I shouldn't have closed the presentation. This is the problem being stony baloney and doing things. You kind of just don't think ahead of time. I should have opened up all the tabs and then closed the presentation. Wait a minute. I can still do this, actually, now that I think about it. Copy link. Click. Click. Yep, there we go. Open link. Open link. And open link. Bam, there we go. Gucci. Share screen. Let's go here. Conceptual well-being for autistic persons. Let's just read the abstract. I don't have access to the full article anymore. In the philosophy of well-being, there is hardly anything written on the lives of people with autism or on the questions whether existing philosophical theories of well-being are suited for understanding how well the lives of autistic persons are going. This paper tries to make some progress towards filling this gap. I start by giving concise account of autism, which highlights the huge heterogeneity among autistics. I discuss some basic features of autism, ask whether there are good reasons why we should need an account of well-being specifically for autistics, and what philosophical well-being research could learn from being informed by blah blah blah. I wish I didn't have ADHD. Autistic experiences and phenomenology. I then investigate on what extent the compatibility approach gives us helpful theory of well-being for autistics, and at what looking through an autism lens can contribute. Blah blah blah. The final part of this paper looks at important difficulty in using compatibility account for well-being in autistics. This is basically the source that we were using in defense of the opposite claim, because the previous one was essentially saying that, like, there's plenty of big sad boys in the autism spectrum community, and then this one is just more of like a defense, I'm pretty sure, if I remember right. I can't quite remember, but it was kind of, if I remember, it was defense. Happiness, prenatal testing. We don't care about that one. Let's go to this article right here. Screen share one more time. Happiness, self-esteem, and pro-sociality in children with autism spectrum disorder. Evan's from UK. This is a good one, if I remember right. High levels of childhood happiness, self-esteem, and pro-sociality are associated with positive social and emotional outcomes. Little is known of whether these construct and how. Yeah, the very low pro-social class with autism spectrum disorder, 3% without autism, blah, blah, blah. The moderate to high positive functioning class with autism spectrum disorder was characterized by children who were happy, moderate self-esteem, and were pro-social. The majority of children were in the optimism class with blah blah blah. Happiness and self-esteem. Further, although a group of children with autism spectrum disorder had lower levels of positive functioning, or multiple suggests that nearly half of children with autism spectrum disorder are happy, have good levels of self-esteem, and are pro-social, which means the other half is not. So, they think I don't get how people can put that in a positive lens, man. I don't get how 50% is positive. Like oh, 50% of the soldiers died. Isn't that great? That means 50% of them lived. No. 50% is not a good number, guys. 50% is a bad number. What the fuck? But at the same time, yeah, 50% of them have good self-esteem and are pro-social. And the other 50% are fucked. But let's ignore them. So, yeah, high levels of childhood happiness, self-esteem, and pro-social are associated with positive social and emotional outcomes. And the study would investigate whether happiness, self-esteem, and pro-sociality co-occur in children and how possible co-occurrence differs between those and those without autism spectrum disorder. Found that for the majority of children with happiness, self-esteem, and pro-sociality co-occurring, we found that for the majority of children, happiness, self-esteem, and pro-sociality co-occur. Furthermore, although as a group of children with autism spectrum disorder have lower levels of positive functioning, our findings suggest that nearly half of children with autism spectrum disorder are happy, have good levels of self-esteem, and are pro-social. Yeah, so basically don't be the other 50%, and you'll be great, guys. You'll be great. Just don't be the other 50%, When you flip a coin, just hope it lands on whatever you call, Gucci. I fucking hate folks, man. People are way too, I don't even know, man. People are just way too positive for no fucking reason. Like, they can manage to turn anything positive, and it just disgusts me. I think it's like those Nietzsche's motherfuckers out here being like, any good thing makes it worth it, Like, you could be tortured your whole life, but then, like, in your deathbed, someone offers you like an ice cream cone, and it's just like, it was all worth it. I'm Friedrich Nietzsche's. I don't fucking know. How are you doing on a subjective level? Now that I did my little presentation, I'm just going to be hanging out here for a little bit. Eating cereal with soy milk because I'm a vegan. soy milk doesn't actually taste that bad. I prefer oat milk, I think, a little bit more than soy, but soy is pretty good. It's better than almond milk. Almond milk kind of sucks in my opinion. I'm going to try coconut milk pretty soon also. I don't know if coconut's going to be good. I almost have a feeling it's going to be too sweet and I'm not going to like it. But if it's not too sweet, then yay. So right now, oat milk and then soy milk are pretty much top tier in my opinion. I mean, man, I'm struggling a bit if I'm to be honest, but I can just about keep it together and soldier on a bit. Are you an antinatalist and EFIList, by the way, or? Because I mean, I completely understand what you mean in terms of just normal mental health. I mean, regardless of situation, if you're, part of the whole EFIList antinatalist club, like, life's depressing as shit if you're part of the gang. But if you're going through some rough shit in terms of, like, your personal life, I mean, I hope it gets better for you. So, no one deserves to go through any horrible shit in life. You're welcome. Hang in there. There's a lot of people in the antinatalist community that have, you know, checked out, and it's unfortunate. Like Ethel Blaze, he took his life not like 5 months ago, I think at this point, almost 6, and probably. I mean, it was I think a member of Stop Having Kids that did, and a few other people that I know that were part of like pro right to die groups and stuff that I'm in. So yeah, people are checking out, and I mean, I completely understand why. Like, life is hell, and it seems like a fight that like doesn't seem to really be going anywhere. But at the same time, like, any change you can do is like a massive change when it comes to antinatalism, because if you prevent one life from coming into existence, that's like one entire you. Like, when you commit suicide, if sorry, not you, but like, if someone commits suicide, basically they're only ceasing the suffering that would have occurred if they continued on. The suffering that they've already experienced is like, it's happened. It can't be undone, and that's tragic and horrible. But it's true. But when it comes down to it, if you can still prevent other people from coming into existence, and when you do that, you're basically like preventing an entire you from coming into existence and suffering. Like, you're preventing like what you would have had experience, you experienced in the past and would experience in the future. So yeah, I mean, stick with it, man. Stick with it, y'all. We need more EFILists and we need more antinatalists. Because, I mean, we need the philosophers to convince the people who are in charge to, like, do things. We need people to have a strong voice to try to convince people of power to, do things. Cheers. Cheers. What does YH stand for? Yeah. Cheers. Just means yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Cool. I'm not very good at text abbreviations. Welcome, whoever joined. How's it going? I just got done talking over a little presentation about in vitro fertilization and the ethics of screening. If you want, you can go back and check all that out, but I talked about that for probably about 45 minutes, I'd say. Have you heard people's disagreements with the philosophy of antinatalism or EFILism? In terms of antinatalism, I've heard plenty of disagreements with EFILism as well. But for antinatalism, I don't think any of the arguments really have much validity behind them, besides for maybe some critiques about general consequentialism. Like if there's some consequentialist critiques that I think are valid, in terms of like just saying that like if you want to prevent animal suffering as well as human suffering, we'll probably need to intervene in animal lives. And a lot of antinatalists are deontological in the sense that they don't think we should interfere with animal lives under any circumstances. So I would have disagreements with them. And I think there are consequentialist arguments you could say, like, that argue that like they're not preventing a good amount of suffering and stuff of that nature. But for EFILism, the most disagreements I've heard with EFILism, that the most valid one I'd say is like generic subjective continuity. Even then, I don't think it's very valid in my opinion, just because this, in my opinion, there's varying heights of like infinity. Like like if you have like say like just pretend like this is like infinity, okay, like right here, like this is like our graph of infinity. You could have like the bar of pain being like way up here for this whole time, just like everybody's like screaming in agony for like like all eternity. Or you can have like down here where there's pinpricks for all eternity. And for me, just there's varying levels of horror that you can have in an infinite amount of time, basically, like to consist of in that time. And generic subjective continuity kind of implies that like, oh well, just because like experience is only going to be the thing that's experienced, we should not really care about like the fact that there could be less pain going on. So I don't know exactly how to explain that, but I mean, you should watch the video that I did yesterday with Perpetual Pleasure, so we go over that a little bit better detail. But yeah, I mean, when it comes down to, I don't think generic subjective continuity is the strongest argument, just because it doesn't seem to convince me that pain would that negative utility would still matter to me. Okay, like negative utility, I think, still matters regardless of generic subjective continuity. So like we still ought to try to prevent as much pain as possible and try to extinct as much life as possible, even if eventually the life will reappear at some point, because the gaps in time matter to me. Basically, even those gaps of non-experience, even if they're not experienced, still mean there's less pain on the whole during those points than if there was something during those times like suffering. I don't know if that makes any sense. I think that made sense, but who knows? Either way, I've been streaming for an hour, so I'm gonna waddle my way upstairs really quickly and have a toke. I'm not gonna end the stream just because I don't really have a whole lot to talk about at this point. I'm just kind of I just kind of wanted to do the stream regarding like my presentation, but at the same time, it is a Q&A stream, so people can ask me questions about literally anything. Very hard to think about. Yeah, that's understandable. Generic subjective continuity is one of those things that's really puzzling to think about in general. Just because there's so many different like reasons why I think it's bullshit. I mean, negative utility is one reason why I think it's bullshit. I also don't think it's guaranteed for negatives, for generic subjective continuity to be a thing, just because we don't know how the universe was made. So if Philippe Mainlander is correct, then this is literally the one and only time, because there's one God. There's by definition of God, there's only one God. And so, basically, under Philippe Mainlander's view, God committed a cosmic version of suicide at the very beginning of time. And that is what the universe is. That's what you and me and everything we see is just God's decaying corpse, which will inevitably cease to exist, and like based off the universe collapsing into entropy and collapsing and folding in on itself, eventually things will come to an end. So, there's always that possibility, which is that I'm praying for, I'm hoping that Mainlander is right. But, but, I think there's multiple reasons why generic subjective continuity is bullshit, in my opinion. But I'm going to go upstairs and have a toke real quickly. So, I'm just going to bring the laptop with me. Wish I didn't fracture my toe a couple weeks ago, because it still hurts. And I don't give a shit, so I just run like a madman. And I'm just like, pain. I just take it. Oh yeah, I have sick tats, by the way, so... If it's too loud, by the way, like the blowtorch, let me know, so that way I can mute myself. Fuck. It's clogged. And it's tragic. So how do you get through, like, stressful times in your life? Like, do you smoke? Do you game? Like, what's your coping mechanisms that you use? For me, it's mainly smoking and watching YouTube videos / distracting myself. Hanging out with friends also, because I have plenty of friends to distract my time with. Oh, can you hear me now, or? I think you probably can now. Okay, now I'm inside. So, yeah, as I was saying, animals die in like crop production and stuff, so like no one really can like live like a decent like life that doesn't really cause a ton of suffering to some extent or another. So when it comes down to it, I don't necessarily think being a loner is a bad thing, because most people are net bad, in my opinion. Most people are bad people. So, I mean, it's like, comparatively speaking, most people are, you can take them at face value. They are what they seem to be, which is usually, comparatively speaking, average, not necessarily like worse than like, what you would expect. But when it comes down to it, yeah, most people aren't vegan. Most people are not trying to prevent as much suffering as they can. We have to consume calories to survive, and unfortunately, those calories usually have a cost to some being. And yeah, it's like, if you're not basically doing as much as you can to try to prevent more suffering than you cause, which is usually a significant amount for most people. I mean, a lot of people are usually in net negative. So if you're not part of the anti-natalist community, and trying to like do your best to like try to convince people, like, to some extent or another, I mean, you might be contributing, you or other people might be contributing to, harms of some sort. So having friends can be a good thing if they're part of the antinatalist community and like vegan community and all that stuff. I have plenty of friends that aren't, by the way, but objectively I'm being hypocritical when I hang out with them, because they are kind of a distraction, They are just a distraction tool, like from like my stresses of life and stuff. Like, when I hang out with them, I'm generally not being productive. I could be like doing what I'm doing right now, like trying to like interact with people and like put my content out there. I could be walking around the streets with my sign that says "Abortion's an act of love" and "Birth is the catalyst of all suffering and death." I could be like, trying to talk to people like, door to door or something. But yeah, it's just like, so yeah, I don't feel guilty for not hanging out with friends. I mean, friends can be good and they're fun to hang out with, but at the same time, it's just like a distraction, a waste for negative utility. You could be doing better things basically with your time than hanging out with a friend. Basically, that's how I look at it. So. Where did I put my phone? Oh, found it. I'm talking to a dude who I'm not sure. I think he may or may not have schizophrenia, but who knows? He could just be a dude who's vibing, but he's a little funky. I think he thinks the feds are after him or something, or like the feds are watching him, or like mind raying people and stuff. And I'm interested in like why he thinks people are being mind rayed, but like I'm like, what the fuck, bro? Like I highly doubt that people are mind raying people that trying to turn people gay. Like why why would the government give enough shits about people being gay to mind ray people? But hey, apparently they do. I apparently have that too. Schizophrenia or mind rays? Because if you have any mind rays, bro, like, please inform me of your mind ray power. No, I'm just joking. I'm just joking. But yeah, dude, there's way too many people in the antinatalist and sentientism and like suffering reduction community that have like schizophrenia. Oh, schizophrenia. I'm sorry to hear that. I mean, not that it's like an illness that can't be treated, but it is like a rough mental illness to go through. So I mean, I'm sorry to hear that for you. But yeah, there's a lot of people in the antinatalist community that have schizophrenia that I've noticed, which makes sense. I mean, it is like, really really fucked up disability that like once you have that, like you kind of are just like shit. God's fucking bullshit. Like if I had schizophrenia, like I would never have got to the point of like where I was with my Christianity, where I was like, I should become a priest. God's a really loving guy. No, I would have been like, fuck God. Like there's no way God just made me like hallucinate for like whatever the fucking reason. It's like and like have like odd thoughts. Like no, there's no reason for that. It's like what the fuck? A loving being would not do that. So yeah, I mean, I understand why there's a lot of antinatalists who are schizophrenic. It's just at the same time, it's odd because like there's plenty of people who are depressed who aren't antinatalists. I mean, I mean, to be fair, I do take antipsychotics, but at the same time, that's because I'm like that's for major depressive disorder. So, uh, yeah, and for I mean, to be fair, I could pull up my diagnosis. Why not? I'll pull up my diagnosis for funsies. I don't care. Um, my diagnosis is moderate episode of major reoccurrent moderate episodes of major reoccurrent depressive disorder. 2. Obsessional thoughts. 3. Anxiety. 4. Bizarre thoughts. 5. Cannabis abuse daily. Fucking being a Chad. Just kidding. Impaired concentration and hallucinogenic use. Being a Chad. Just kidding. But major depressive disorder can be pretty frightening. Yeah, I mean, luckily I haven't attempted suicide ever, but yeah, it's one of those things where, yeah, it's just every single day wanting to die. So, every single day just wanting to return to nothingness and constantly thinking about, like if there's any value to anything, and like, yeah, it's just constant suicidal ideation, basically, for like valid reasons. And that's the thing I'm constantly arguing with my my psychiatrist with, is like, I'm like, yo, man, life is just objectively really, really bad, guys. Like, even if I do have a chemical imbalance, it doesn't really matter because, like, objectively, I can argue that life is like horrible, like either way. So, like you have to like try to like argue against me. You can't just like be like, yo, bro, but like I feel differently, because I'm gonna be like, yeah, I know you feel differently. Evolution literally selects for people that are more likely to reproduce and pass on their genes. I understand that most people feel happy, Doc. That's not my issue. I understand that. My issue is that people are literally programmed to feel happy when they're literally going through hell. And whenever our whole justification for continuing this bullshit on is like, oh, look at all these advancements we're doing, though. Life is better than like 100 years ago, though, right? Like, imagine the future. Primitive tribes are just as happy as we are. There's no difference. They're just as satisfied with life as we are, if not more so. Like, all we're doing is just extending our lives and pretending that, like, because we don't have to fear dying from the elements, that we're happier. But in reality, like, taxes and bullshit and all that shit is just horrible. No matter what, society's fucked, and it's just in human nature to be like need machines. But hey, my psychiatrist is just like, hey, bro, are you feeling better? And I'm like, I don't know, like, I guess, but at the same time, I still want to die. And she's like, I guess we'll just double your doses, bro. And I'm like, go for it, man. Honestly, I could give a shit less. Like, you can put me in whatever level you want with the antipsychotics or antidepressants. We'll see if it works, just for funsies. I'm just here to get a diagnosis because I'm curious. So, do what you want, doc. I'll follow your prescriptions. But at the same time, I'm also just like, why the fuck am I wasting my money talking to these people? I know I'm fucked up in the head, but not in the way that they think. It's like, no, I'm fucked up in the head because like I want like the world to end and I want like people to suffer because I'm a sadist. I'm a sadist, but that's what's fucked up with me. I'm a sadist. That's not cool. Now, is depression bad? Yeah, yeah, depression is not good. But when it comes down to it, that's not my fucking reason I'm talking to you, doctor. It's because I like to watch people suffer, and suffering is what gets me off, chief. Like that's not cool. That's not ethically sound to be getting off on other people's suffering. But at the same time, she's just like, yeah, but like if you're suicidal, that's like a big problem, and like we really need to talk about that and like try to fix that. And I'm like, everybody should be suicidal, doctor. You don't fucking understand. Everybody, if they are in their right mind, should want to cease existing. Like, what the fuck are you on? That is, I'm gonna read the chat again. My bad. Uh, this is what my mate said to me. I said, but it will never be good enough. It's such a piss take for the most part. Yeah, exactly. People are just fucking taking the piss. They're just, generating their own meanings, and it's bullshit. It's never gonna be good enough. It's just compensation for like dumb shit, and we're just in constant pain and like climbing against things. And if people ever, that's why people are addicted to working, like in America. It's because like we have everything, and if you have everything, you realize that you have fucking nothing. Once you have realized that like once you have everything, you realize that nothing fucking really matters. Like that, and so basically people are just distracting themselves of work, drugs, gaming, constantly distractions basically. And if you feel guilty for gaming, you're gonna try to work your ass off because that's what America's all about is work, 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 work. Then you can't feel guilty if you're working, right? No, you'll still feel miserable, but you won't know why, and you'll just like I know people like this, so that's why I'm using this as a good example. But yeah, it's sad. So that's why I work part time and try not to work very much because working is just like draining your fucking life force out of you. It ain't worth it, you know. It's like money buys me food, and money buys me drugs for which I legally buy from like the stores because Delta 8 is legal here, and money buys me food, as I said before, and it buys me video games. If I can buy a video game like No Man's Sky or Overwatch, unlimited time. I can play those games forever. Quite literally, No Man's Sky, I could play forever and never complete the game. Like there's so many planets in that thing that every person on the entire Earth could play the game, and it would still take like thousands of years for every person to visit every planet. So why like for me it's like there's plenty of things I can entertain myself with for like cheap, just meditation is a thing Buddhists do, and they seem to think that's pretty cool, and that just requires breathing, and last time I checked there's plenty of oxygen, and I don't need money for that, so at least not yet. Maybe in like 2050 you might need to pay for oxygen. If that happens, like fuck, I'm just gonna exit. Yeah, just work to get enough of it. Yeah, I got that. It sucks, my dude. Life's full of bullshit. I wonder what day Salad Guy's on. 1,861. Yo, bro, he's been eating a lot of salads. Life is a bit like Buddhism. It is. Yeah, I basically agree with Buddhists when it comes to most things, except for the whole spiritual reincarnation, karma stuff, None of that. That's just like nonsense. But when it comes to like the whole life is suffering, negative utility, desire machines, pretty much they spot on with all that. So yeah, all the talk of enlightenment and defense, since no one ever gets there, 100%. Like, yeah, people are always climbing to get to this higher knowledge, understanding. Like, everybody wants to know more, 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 more. But we're never going to get there. We're never going to be close to, like, as David Benatar says, like, in terms of knowledge, are we closer to knowing everything or closer to knowing nothing? We're definitely closer to knowing nothing. So it's like, yeah, like, we're climbing for all this enlightenment and knowledge and stuff, but we're getting nowhere. We're everything that we've learned is big is like like we've already learned the big things. All the big things have been learned already. We don't need to we don't need to learn anything else. Like it's just once we have understood evolution, once we understood physics, once we understood the Big Bang, like that those concepts, like that's all we needed to learn. Like after that, it was pretty much like everything we were learning is just like minuscule in comparison. We've already learned the important information essentially. So yeah, like it's not you don't even need to consider those things being enlightened. Like it's very obvious to me that life is horrible. Like you don't need to even know that evolution is a thing to be life's horrible. Like I'm pretty sure people have been saying that for like I mean Buddhism's existed before evolution was a concept that was understood, and they understood life was suffering. So I mean, like yeah, like fuck. You don't even need to understand evolution and physics to understand that the life is just chaotic horror. But you know that's basically the relevant stuff. It's just evolution and understanding that we came from a chaotic like expansion that is completely meaningless. Isn't that right, Marco? He's an adorable little guy, aren't you? He's a good little EFIList. He caught a rabbit a couple days ago, a baby rabbit, and ate the whole thing, scarfed it down. He also caught, I think, one or two birds in this last week since spring started. And he decided to go outside again. So he's doing a good job, eliminating all those nasty breeders out there in the world. Yeah, in the animal kingdom. And Marco is good and neutered, so just like me. I got a vasectomy and Marco's neutered, so he's doing a good job. Aren't you, Marco? He's like, I have no clue what you're talking about. I'm just doing my instincts. I'm like, yes, you are. Exactly what you were bred to do. Killing pests. Oh. Arr. Feisty. Yo, I love cats also. Dogs are kind of okay. I'm not a big fan of dogs. I like huskies and like yeah, I guess I like huskies and some dogs, but for the most part, I'm a cat person. Cats are more independent and just kind of do their thing. They understand how to communicate with you when they need to. But and he's a good boy. They're good companion animals. I had one come around my old man's house a couple years back. Yeah, we have a few cats that walk around our house too, just like strays or like other cats in the neighborhood. My cat, he has a cat door, well, dog door. Basically, he can just go in and out as he pleases. So he gets in fights with the neighborhood cats every once in a while, which is always funny to hear. My cat's kind of a pussy, so he'll always run back inside and be all puffed up and scared. So it's pretty funny. Aren't you, Marco? You're kind of a little bitch. But to be fair, as a negative utilitarian, I wouldn't want to get in no fights either. So, any unnecessary pain is a no go. So, like, why fight when you can just go inside? So, fair enough, Marco, honestly. I mean, I agree. Avoid confrontation when possible. Cyprus is the third largest and third most populous island in the Mediterranean. Hmm. Yeah, you from Europe, by the way? Because I know you said, what did you say earlier that made me think you were from Europe? Yeah, and you said, uh, it's such a piss take for the most part. When people say I'm friends with a bunch of European guys, and they always say taking the piss. So I imagine you're from like around the UK area, but I've never been to Europe yet. I plan to go someday because all my buds from Europe are just like, yo, bro, come down here for like a D&D festival or something. It'd be so much fun. And I'm like, honestly, that would be a blast, but I'm kind of cheap. So, I don't know. It's like, why save up money when I could just get like hit by a car and die? You're in the UK. I guess that, yeah, straight up. I'm from the US though, which is pretty obvious, I imagine. So just my personality. So I've heard Americans are kind of an obvious thing to tell. So the weed is shite here. The weed is shite here. No, I believe it. I know it's like still legal for y'all, so or like might have been recently legalized if you guys are lucky, but I'm pretty sure it's still legal for y'all. So yeah, I believe that it's probably shit quality street stuff that you just have to deal with buying because whatever's in supply is basically whatever's in demand. Well, here we had you know everything. We have like shit from Cali. We have shit from like all around. Now it's being legalized everywhere basically. We have illegal shit from the cartels in Mexico that still gets shipped up from like to like Wisconsin and other various like places where it's technically illegal to have Delta 9. So yeah, basically in the United States you got like everything because like it's such a big country. So yeah, it's weed's pretty bopping up here. So the West has some good shit in North America. Cartel weed's pretty good, bro. Not gonna lie. Not that I know. I just know someone who may or may not know people in the cartel, and have tried some, and it's pretty good. But at the same time, it's more expensive than it needs to be. You can buy Delta 8 for way cheap online in bulk. So it's a shame that you guys have it still illegal there. Like, you can't just go to a store and buy. My cat's just like pulling out some of his loose hair, and he's just like, "Stop it." Marco, now it's summer, you're shedding everywhere. Yes way. You'd be surprised. Like, the cartel is surprisingly big, like, everywhere. Like, they have a lot of power, which is weird. You wouldn't think that the cartel would have, like, a lot of power, like, in the United States, but they do. They're kind of everywhere. There was a dude from the cartel that, like, got arrested, I think, like, a couple years back for, like, a murder in just my city. So, pretty wild. Because I'm in Wisconsin, that's like way up in the northern part of the United States. Like, the cartel, you would think would be like more towards the southern points of the United States, but it's kind of just everywhere. Welcome to whoever joined. Yeah, it's really awful what goes on. Yeah, it really is. I've seen some horrible fucking cartel videos online. Like, yeah, man, I don't know if you've seen some of those cartel videos, but if you have, then yeah, the level of brutality that people will do just to send messages to people and or for their own entertainment. It's fucked up. Like, I saw a video once for like some politician and his son got like captured by cartel members, and they literally filleted they literally like slit the father's throat in front of the kid, and then gutted the kid alive as the dad was bleeding out in front of him. And yeah, it was pretty fucked up. So, moral of the story is, don't go to anywhere with cartels if you want to live and or not see really fucked up shit. So stay where the gang activity is minimal. I don't have the bottle to watch it. That's fair. I'm basically pretty close to being a psychopath, so I can watch almost anything without being disturbed. But it's not a good thing. That's just, natural sadism, which I highly recommend people don't embrace. I mean, I do and don't. I recommend people be ethical sadists, which basically means have the mindset of a sadist, but like the actions of like an ethical person who's like a negative utilitarian and doesn't want to cause suffering. which is a difficult line to walk, but nonetheless, it's the best way to minimize suffering for oneself and for other beings. So, because honestly, the world's pretty fucking horrible, and if you don't, either either you're ignorant or you have to be a sadist to how to function in this world, as Perpetual Pleasurist says. And if you're ignorant, unfortunately, you're probably going to cause a lot of suffering to other beings. So, I don't recommend people become ignorant and or remain ignorant. But when it comes to becoming, aware, you either really become really depressed and, suicidal, or you basically embrace sadism and, you either become a really bad person or you do what I say, which is become an ethical sadist, where it's like you take amusement and joy from watching all the horrors around you, but at the same time, understand that it's really fucked up and wrong and try to prevent it as much as possible. Take amusement in everything, basically, like absurdism, essentially. Uh, basically be an absurdist, but like, try to, like an absurdist sadist, but like try to still be ethical as possible. And that is how you basically minimize pain as much as possible in the world for yourself and other people. So that's what I recommend. It's a really hard line. It's a real hard tango to dance, if you know what I mean. Because, you don't want to become an actual sadist and you don't want to become ignorant. So, you have to still like maintain your values while at the same time trying not to suffer yourself. So, real difficult line to balance. Honestly, it's really fucking difficult. Like for me, like the more ethical I become, the more emotionally like vivid my life becomes, and basically, my depression and sadness has kind of been off the charts. At least, especially since my friend Shamira died / killed themselves. So since then, my emotions have been really fucky wucky. But hey, I'm still hanging in there. Well, I think it's a difficult one because humans cause some awful amounts of unnecessary suffering, but then those people are victims too. Yeah, exactly. Everybody's a victim. And I don't think everybody is necessarily responsible. I don't believe in free will. So for me, it's like we have to have law enforcement and punishment in order to minimize pain, because pain is what matters essentially. Like experience generates value and pain is severely important. It matters more than pleasure does. So, we have to minimize pain, and that means we have to enforce laws and stuff of that nature. But I don't necessarily believe in free will. And yeah, as you said, everybody's a victim of being brought into existence, and like, victims of their natural psychologies, victims of the circumstances they were raised in, victims of many things. So it's like I don't blame people for doing bad things, but we still need to enforce laws and things of that nature. So, hence why I believe in law enforcement and believe in police and all that stuff. I'm a leftist, but I don't believe in the whole like, we don't need cops motto and all that shit. I don't buy into that. But I think we need cops. I don't think we need law enforcement. But, it has to be differently. It has to be structured differently than it currently is, because right now it's structured in a way that like is about punishment, and I think that's not very cool. So that's not very cool at all. It kind of generates more suffering than needs to be. So
When it comes to those cartel members that cause a ton of suffering, yeah, they're bad folk when it comes down to it, that deserve punishment / to be locked up. But they don't deserve it in the sense that like they're not like, they're not free, so they don't deserve it in the sense of like punishment of like a moral agent for doing wrong. It's more of like they deserve punishment to like dissuade others from doing like what they have done. That's the only reason I think punishment should exist, is solely for dissuasion purposes, and not for actually like for like a judgment on a person's character. character is still important to assess because, you know, character can determine like what people will do in the future more likely than not. And, you know, if someone's like should be locked up or institutionalized. But, you know, other than that, like, it's not too important. So welcome to everybody else is watching. It says there's 2 people watching, and I know Kaz has been watching me for like at least almost 2 hours now. But welcome to whoever else is watching. Feel free to ask any questions. I can paste another link in case anybody wants to join the stream. That way you can talk about whatever you want on here. Feel free to join. To Kaz as well, feel free to join. Yeah, you don't have to show your face or anything. You can just talk with your voice. But yeah, I mean, feel free to ask questions just normally in chat as well. I mean, you know, we've just been talking about basically a ton of different shit. At the very beginning, I started with a past presentation on in vitro screening, and yeah, so in vitro screening is just the idea of like removing the egg and fertilizing it, then implanting it back into a womb, and before you implant it, screening it for various genetic disabilities. And in the past, I did a group project presentation on the ethics of pre-implantation screening. So if you want to watch that in the very beginning, that's also something you can do now or later. But if you have any questions on in vitro fertilization screenings, I can answer questions on that, or just various ethical questions or questions you just have about life. I'm pretty good at giving advice. So, being that I'm rather psychopathic in nature and also a philosophy major, you know, I give pretty solid, unbiased advice, in my opinion. So,
Yo, you're right, man.
yeah, I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
Cool, man. Not too bad, thanks. Cheers, man.
Cheers.
Yeah, you know, you're quite young compared to me. Like I'm 32, man.
32. I'm only 23. Yeah.
Yeah, it's mad that you've come to this kind of conclusion on life at such a like. I think it's a pretty young age to come to the conclusion.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I think I'm rather psychopathic, so I think that's kind of the reason that it was so easy for me to come to the conclusion. Just because, like, you know, when you have such a fucked up mind, you kind of realize, like, there's probably no God.
Yeah,
And once you realize there's probably no God, you kind of get, like, rather nihilistic about existence. And so for
yeah,
a long time, I was, like, rather just, like, everything's pointless, you know? And eventually I came to the like tripped balls on some like acid and shit and was like, you know, I think there's more to life than just it being completely meaningless. Like there's some value here in experience. And then I started exploring philosophy and I came to negative utilitarianism and antinatalism and all that stuff. But I think it's just because like, you know, a mix of my psychology, and also I met that one friend that ended up committing suicide, and she happened to influence me a lot in becoming an atheist as well. So
Yeah. I came from a religious background, so my whole family was like religious, like not in the strict sense of like, you know, being really strict about it, but just that general belief that there is a God, and like the kind of narrative that the religion tells you is probably true and stuff like this.
same here, basically. I mean, I didn't really go to church very frequently. It was like every once in a while, but like, yeah, they were generally like pray to the Father, you know, and recite the Lord's Prayer and stuff like that every once in a while, you know, things like that nature. So
Yeah. The thing is, once you get off that train, sort of, it's like you just kind of see things for what they are, kind of more really, what they actually are at face value. And yeah, it's just really depressing and very like soul crushing in a way.
yeah, it really was. I mean, I remember I was like depressed as all fuck, like for years on end, like like beyond suicidal. Like I basically like the only reason I was alive was because I promised someone that I lived to 25. So
Oh, man.
23, get in there, but
Yeah, fuck, shit. It's just thing is like what a lot of people are brought up in this kind of communities is that even like a lot of prominent atheists, they'll see like the conclusion that science gives them, which is just like, yeah, like nature's brutal, and we're just kind of contrived to reproduce by like evolution and stuff. But then they'll still draw a positive conclusion as a whole to life, and they'll be like, "Oh, we're lucky to be here," and there's a there's a point to like us being here, and like we should keep going with like procreation and stuff.
yeah, I think that's why like for me like that was what turned me into nihilist really easily was because like the conversion to atheism still I was still like rather positive for a bit there like just because like when you convert to atheism it's because like you're exposed to atheist content and they're all like really positive like mean like just because you're an atheist doesn't mean like there's no values, you know, like you create your own values, you know, man, and all
Yeah,
that type of bullshit narrative. So
yeah,
so for a while I was like kind of like okay with like just that narrative, but I was still like rather psychopathic. So I was like at the same time still buying into like only social contract, and I was like still rather like brutally homicidal in my mind and shit.
oh, yeah, shit. But is it just like human nature that, for the most part, that just pisses you off? Like,
Basically, yeah, human
yeah.
nature like really pissed me off, and just like you know, generally, I'm like my brain's just kind of fucked. So,
Mine is too, man. I get you. I get you.
so
Yeah,
it was just kind of like realizing that, like, huh, like it can't be like what these guys were telling me that it's like you just generate your own value. It's like no, like there's objectively something like inherently wrong with like life. Like people, like
yeah,
human nature is like inherently fucked, and there's something like a major problem like with both myself and like everybody else. Like once you realize that yourself is like really fucked up, you start to like kind of like look upon like everything else. Like what if everything else is fucked up too? And then you realize, oh shit, yeah,
yeah.
I'm not just the only thing that's fucked up. If you think you're fine, then you start to if no one's fine. So if you think
No,
you're fine, then you know you're gonna try to look at the world like it's fine too. But once you realize you're really fucked up, then you can start kind of taking a lens on the world also, and you're like, oh shit.
yeah, I know, man. And like, fuck, it's so bad. And just like, for example, like, we were kind of all indoctrinated into eating meat and stuff. And then just for so long, we just kept doing it, and like, is probably kind of fucked up for the animals, but no, just keep doing it, and then you're just like at a certain point, you're just like, holy shit, and then you just think about the whole thing, like how many, it's like Emendem says in one of his videos, like how many animals are tortured for each like single human existence. It's just you can't even comprehend it, like how much horror's going on. It's just so fucked up.
Yeah, I don't know if do you know Perpetual Pleasurist, that channel, or not
Yeah,
so
I
much
do, I do.
realist?
Yeah, I'm sub too.
Yeah, I am too. I'm a fan of Scott, and he's a good guy.
Yeah,
But when it comes down to it, yeah, he's not an EFIList, and he kind of is absolutely perplexed by like the idea that like 99% of the people on the planet are just like a blight to the earth, like they're just like beyond horrible, like they should not exist essentially, like as they are, like in character. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah. And
I
it's
don't know
better.
if you agree,
Yeah.
but
Well, it's yeah. People like to say like I don't know. I I think everyone would be better off if we just closed the carnival down. Like seriously,
oh,
um,
100%, yeah.
and the animals would be better off. We'd be better off. Um, and I just I don't know. I think there's a lot of like programming from society and culture and all these different things to like tell, and even from the biology itself, to kind of like tell people, tell the organism like this is worth it, like this is an amazing opportunity and it's really good, and on balance it's better than worse, you know.
You know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yes, I think a lot of it is biology more than
Mhm.
anything else. But
Yeah.
yeah, definitely society has like this huge narrative, like everywhere basically. I mean, at least in the West, especially. Like the West is like really huge about like life being like inherently good and like the prospects of like the future, like the American dream. Like, there's always something to strive for, like
Right. Right.
things of that nature. So yeah, there's like tons of societal programming, but I think that it stems originally from just the biological programming of evolution of like always striving to persevere to reproduce. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, you see, it's strange like when like someone like Benatar comes on a radio show and they're like, are you really serious about this? And he's like, yeah, I'm completely serious. But um, I think the more if people give it more thought, they like so every time they suffer, maybe they think about, oh, what was that guy saying? Oh, I heard he was saying this, and the more it happens, the more they think about it. Then they might actually come to a conclusion, start to agree with the conclusion.
yeah, people just need to put everything into perspective. Like once you it clicks into people's minds, it's like a complete perspective change. Like when
Yeah,
I'm just walking from like my car all the way to like my class, and it's like in the middle of winter, my feet are like cold and sore and tired, and I'm
mm,
just walking and I'm like freezing. It's like it's not that bad, right? There's people that were literally being tortured to death. I'm just a little bit cold, my feet are a little bit sore. But when you realize that, like, you do not have to be here with sore feet, you do not have to be here cold and shivering, you don't have to be going through like all this bullshit elitist class stuff.
yeah,
All that is just programmed into you by society and completely unnecessary artificial goals manifested to give us like artificial purpose. Like, yeah, you kind of just it clicks in your brain like, huh, all of this, every single little tiny frustration is unnecessary and should not be inflicted upon me nor anybody else, and it's never
no,
worth it for any being to go through it.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
it's bullshit. Once that clicks into your mind, it's like a complete perspective change, and you just realize that like there's so many layers of like how hellish this world is that like
oh
you don't really think about, when you're just going through life beforehand.
yeah, yeah, it is. I mean, I fell out with a few of my mates actually when I when I started really going through a tough time because they were saying like, "Oh, we'll do something about it then," and I was just thinking in my head, like, but the majority of the suffering that we encounter, we can't do anything about, and they're not. They think it's all treatable and there's a solution for everything. No, it's not like that. It's the other way around. Like,
Inherent to the human condition, like it's it's unavoidable.
yeah, it's just mad. And then I brought up the right to die to a few of them, and they're just like, no. And then I even had one person say, "Oh, if I got cancer, I'd just battle through it. Like, I wouldn't accept like euthanasia and all that." And it's just like people just have a lot of like delusions about things. Like, sorry,
Just,
not
they're so
delusions.
arrogant. They're yeah.
Yeah, is that what it's like over there as well?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, people don't understand the like suffering until they're directly going through it or have gone through it.
Oh gosh, man.
Like
Yeah, and you know, it just reminds me of like I was listening to that Sam Harris one recently with Benatar, and there's a point in it where he goes, there are some people that have changed their minds and agreed with my position when it's got that bad for themselves personally, and then they've said like nothing is worth what I'm going through now. The thing is, like this type of suffering where it gets that bad, it will happen to most people that you see around you.
people
Yeah,
just they're gonna have like a heart attack in their sleep, and it's just like no, most people
no,
aren't that lucky.
no, that's the thing, man. That's the thing.
They don't realize that like 1 in 3 people get cancer, and then 1 in 5 people die from cancer. And it's like, imagine being that person that gets cancer, doesn't die from cancer, and then instead gets like raped and murdered in the streets. That happens to people.
Oh gosh, yeah,
Like people don't think about like how horrible life can be. Just, and that's not even like the worst thing. Like you could be born like a sex slave, or you could be born like a slave in like a lithium mine or something like that, where you're literally breathing like things that are gonna like give you cancer, and you're gonna die by the age of like 20. Like your whole body is just in agony every time you inhale. Like
yeah, and this stuff's going on in different parts of the world, right? It might not be going on that much in developed countries where we've like managed to stamp out those sort of practices, but it does go on in other parts.
and we have more slavery now than any point of history, like technically speaking. I mean, yeah, it's fucked up, but technically, if you look at the numbers, like just because the population's so big these days, like there's technically more slaves nowadays than there were in any points of history. And I mean, slavery still goes on in the United States, like on the DL, like no joke. Like they arrested some people for essentially running like a farm like with a bunch of illegal immigrants, where they basically were all unpaid. They basically took their passports away from them so they couldn't leave the country, and like refused to let them like go essentially, and just like kept them there. So there's like quite literally like slavery still going on in the United States, like to this day, and like all around the world. So the world is still pretty fucked.
Yeah, and then people have this idea that eventually the world will get to a point where it's not that bad, and it's just a pipe dream in the head. Like it's never realistically gonna. No.
Technology just means more ways to exploit people. Like we can see that like with the internet, it's just more ways to exploit, more expansive ways to sell people and stuff of that nature. More like it's just technology is gonna be like, if we get like mind, like we're trying to like do like mind link stuff, like implant something in your brain so you can like talk to someone else with that, like
Right.
that's going to be used for warfare like right away, like being able to talk to people like miles away, like remotely, like for like your brain and communicate information like that way. Like people are going to be exploiting that for military use. They're going to be exploiting that for like a bunch of shit. Like it's going to be like Like technology is just going to be used to exploit and exploit and exploit. It's never going to be used for benevolent means.
Yeah, yeah. And I even think, though, even if it is used for benevolent purposes, it might solve a few problems, but it's never going to get to the point where it, absolves us of like enough misery to make it worth it. And there's just always going to be serious suffering going on.
Yeah, like I agree with Benatar and and Mendham, where they said like life's a zero-sum game. Like we're born into negative, essentially. We're born into like need. And that's basically like what pleasure is just like fulfilling need or like getting rid of pain.
Right.
So I 100% agree. Like no matter what like we do, we're just essentially eliminating certain pain aspects, but there's gonna always be pain that remains no matter what. Like
Yeah.
if we eliminate all pain, we're basically becoming like vegetables, like people in comas essentially. Like there's gonna be nothing left of us like once we get rid of pain. I think pain is like inherently tied to like desire, in my opinion. Like like it's part of like avoidance is a part of like our desires essentially, to some extent or another.
Yeah, I don't think it's realistic, really. It's just, I mean, okay, say you became completely numb, like I don't, they gave you some painkiller to make you numb. Then there's other problems of like, if you're like on ketamine or something, like, and it numbs you to like tactile sensation, you can end up getting big gashes on your legs and your arms that you don't know about from like walking into the table or something. But yeah, I don't know. It's just all the problems relating to the human body and brain. You can't. In the end, you can't really fix it. It will come crumbling somehow. Like, and it's just. I don't know, man. I don't know.
No, I agree 100%. Like our bodies are fragile, and if we're arrogant to think that we can engineer pain away from ourselves, like to a permanent, lasting effect.
Yeah, as you say. Yeah, man. Gosh, it's mad how you go from like, I don't know if you ever had this feeling where you thought, oh, I'm lucky to be alive, and like, oh, I'm quite lucky, but then to go from that to realizing, oh shit, we're all really unlucky. Like,
Yeah.
oh God.
No, I understand that feeling. Like
Yeah.
when I tripped balls on 7 tabs of LSD, it basically changed me from being like really pessimistic about the world to like fearing death and like thinking that like, there has to be value here and going on like this huge search for meaning. And then I just basically was like, huh.
Yeah.
Life is pain.
Oh God.
Shit. So yeah, I understand that. It was like at my low, I thought, and then I was like, I wasn't at my low. I was like down here, but I wasn't at my low. And then I like took 7 tabs of LSD and I went like down a little further, and then I climbed up, and I was like, this is actually getting kind of good. Life is actually not that bad. And then I explored philosophy, and then I was just like, oh shit, the truth.
Oh fuck.
Just
Yeah.
tanks. Just life
Yeah.
becomes misery again.
I know. Fucking hell, man. Yeah, one of my like main reasons for like adopting this view is just that how serious the suffering can get and like the levels of harm can get for like sentient beings. It just gets to like those cartel videos you're on about, that kind of like suffering, and it doesn't have to be someone technically murdering you. It could just be a natural death by just harms in the physical world, like falling off a height or something like that.
Yeah,
So,
one of the most horrible video I think I've ever saw was of people. It was a GoPro, like a GoPro video of a vehicle, essentially, like a vehicle camera,
right.
and there was a family in like a van, and there was a child in the back seat, and the husband was driving, and the wife was in the passenger seat, and they were
Right.
driving behind a truck that was hauling bricks,
Yeah.
and a brick came loose from the truck that was in front of them and went right through the windshield and straight through the wife's head and just caved her skull in.
Fuck. Yeah.
And you just hear the man just screaming and wailing in like this pure emotional agony, and the kid in the back seat just is like traumatized, like in shock for a little bit, and then realizes what the hell is happening and just starts crying also. And it's
Yeah.
just like you realize like how like just from going point A to point B, no one's fault really. Just the world can just absolutely shatter like someone's life in the most like brutal way like possible, like permanently traumatizing a kid and like permanently like you know giving like PTSD to the husband, constantly being like worried that like your daughter is potentially just gonna like get killed on the road by like some shit like that happened to your wife, you know, like
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
world's brutal as fuck. So
Yeah. Yeah. And just it's almost like a paradox in and of itself. Just this very sensitive, vulnerable creature, like sentient beings are, put into this brutal. Well, it can be brutal, like just this indifferent physical universe, and just that's just going on these laws of physics and stuff. Like and like, there's no God. You know, people believe in God as sort of like a safety net or like some sort of like universe referee who's just like blows the whistle. Like, oh, that's a bit too much there. And just atheism is basically like admitting that there's none of that going on. Like there really isn't. Like, it can get as bad and as graphic as the the physic the like laws can make them to be. Like
yeah, atheism and deism are basically just saying there's nothing fucking watching us. Like this shit is up to us to fix. Like it is
yeah,
bad here,
yeah,
and anything that goes is like a product of chaos. So
yeah,
we need to fix it if we
yeah.
want any order.
Yeah, here's the thing. I think like the difference between antinatalism and EFILism is basically like um antinatalism, like, so we think like okay, human procreation, that's what we've got control over. We can like stop it ourselves, or we can also stop it in others who haven't heard of it by like telling them about the philosophy and kind of getting through to them, and then maybe on a global scale. But I think Benatar's more pessimistic in the sense that he doesn't think like it's going to happen on a global scale, or that you can even convince many people to do this. Like just let it end with you, kind of thing. No, he believes that people are going to keep on procreating, and we're going to go out by some other disaster, like maybe a meteor from space or something like that. But then I think, like someone like Emendum, who coined the term EFILism, he's kind of saying like, no, it's kind of like our duty to stop, all kind of life perpetuating on this planet just because of how serious the harm is, and even if it seems impossible to do, we should at least try and come up with ideas to like get it done, because it's just a very big tragedy if we don't.
Yeah, I 100% agree with Mendham that like we have a duty, and even if we can't, even if it is impossible, we should at least try, because doing something's better than doing nothing.
Yeah.
So it can't get worse than it is, basically. So like
No.
whatever we do is going to be an improvement. So yeah, I think the antinatalists are not even. There's a lot of them that are too pessimistic, like as you said about Benatar, where it's like he just doesn't think that we can do much about it. But then I think there's a lot of antinatalists who also think, like in deontological terms, where like we don't have the right to interfere with animals. And I think that's problematic in its own sense, because it's like animals are constantly infringing on each other, and it's inherent to life that we're constantly infringing on each other's like supposed rights. So as a
Yeah.
consequentialist, it just seems like the right thing to do is whatever like prevents the most rights violations and or suffering. So
Yeah.
like it seems EFILism is the way we ought to go, but
Yeah. 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 One thing you could add, maybe, I don't know, maybe you could add like they can't like they don't have the like knowledge or like the wisdom to know that like their situation and the plight of their situation, and why it exists in the first place, and how to stop it from existing. They don't know all of that like knowledge base that we've got, and then it's just letting it go on is just. I think it's bad, man.
it's cruel. It's
Yeah,
like
it's
watching
cruel.
a bunch of toddlers like fight each other but not intervening when you have the ability to like stop them from fighting. It's like they're not moral agents, but as a moral agent yourself, you can recognize like they shouldn't fight each other. So it's like you should be like, hey guys,
Yeah,
stop this.
yeah, yeah, and yeah, like I was talking to this guy, and he goes, like, I was talking about like the brutality that goes on in the savannah in Africa, like with the lions and everything like that. And he goes, I think we shouldn't interfere in that, and it's like, nah, man, I think that should have been stopped ages ago, man. What the fuck? Like, it's just so.
It's like, what's your are you vegan, by the way, or
At the moment, I'm trying to go vegan fully, but I'm like vegetarian at the moment, so
that's
I
fair.
I do consume some like like dairy in terms of like I'll get a pizza sometimes, and
I'd
although
recommend trying to transition away from dairy as much as you can. I don't know if you've
yeah,
seen the documentary called Milk, but I
no,
highly recommend giving it a watch. It will definitely change your mind on dairy like real fast. It's pretty
thanks, man.
brutal.
Cheers, I appreciate it, I've like tried to move away from like actually getting milk now, so I'm okay with like just having like oat milk, like you were saying, and I think it's good enough. So yeah, just trying to. Yeah, it's just about just being
Pizza's
more.
pizza's really good tasting, man. I understand the issue. Like I work as a merchandiser, so I like stock grocery stores and stuff, and they have like free samples every Sunday, and I'm just literally stocking soda, hungry as shit, and like they're just giving out free samples of pizza right in front of me, and I'm like, damn, I really want. I'm like, God damn it, guys! Like, why you do this to me? Come
Yeah,
on, like, just go vegan, guys. I don't want to be tormented every Sunday. Come on.
man. But you go by your principles. That's really like respectable, man. Yeah, and I
Yeah,
should be doing the
thank you.
same, really. Um, and I will endeavor to try.
It took me
And
6 years though to stick to my principles. Like I believed in veganism for like 6 years before I decided to like actually become vegan. So
right,
it's a hard transition, and like it takes time to convince yourself and to like really feel it. You know what I mean?
yeah. Can I just ask you? You mentioned that documentary called Milk. Can you say some of what was going on in that documentary?
Yeah, I can. I mean, it goes through like the whole processes of like how eventually all cattle who are bred for milk eventually will be slaughtered inevitably anyways, like they will
Mm.
eventually go to slaughter. The only
Yeah.
difference is like as an ethicist and like vegan, you can't, I mean, life on a factory farm is not very good. I mean, in general, life isn't good in general, but especially on a factory farm. So they're basically just hooked up to like milk machines where like for a couple of years of their life until like they no longer produce milk anymore. And it goes through like the whole process of like how like, well, beings only produce milk when they're nursing young, essentially.
Yeah, when they get
So
pregnant.
we basically artificially inseminate them, and like it goes through the process of like how that's done, and how like they take away the calves like right away after birth, so that, like they don't feed on the milk, but instead
Oh,
like
yeah.
the milk is like, like taken by the machines or whatever. And
Yeah.
the artificial selection process of breeding cattle so that they produce way more milk than naturally done in the wild, so that, like it's actually painful for them to like not get milk daily. So it's
Yeah.
like it's just like a whole thing on like the exploitation of animals, and like how we're essentially artificially inseminate them, which is like essentially rape, and like it goes through like the whole process of like how we treat them as like less than objects, like
Yeah. And it must be like bad for them to keep giving birth like that all the time, like after being inseminated.
100%. Like when you're pregnant, like it takes up a lot of calcium to give birth to like a young. So like a lot of even like women who are like pregnant of like the human species, they'll like break bones, like more susceptible to breaking bones, chipping teeth, things of that nature. So like when it comes to cattle who are basically like locked in like a tiny little stall where they don't have very much muscle development, there's a lot of broken bones in general, and like mal like maldevelopment of like muscle tissue and stuff of that nature that goes on in the whole industry. So
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. It's awful. Have you ever heard of that guy called Earthling Ed?
yeah, I have. He's great.
Yeah, he's a good guy. He's a good guy. Yeah, I don't think he's like agrees with antinatalism. Um,
I don't know why him and Vegan Gains and a bunch of other. As I said, there's a lot of deontological antinatalists, and there's a lot of deontological vegans as well, and a lot of them are like rights based and stuff. And I know there's a video that I think it was Earthling Ed, though it might have been a different vegan YouTuber, but one of them made a video called like here, I'm gonna try to find it really quickly. Uh, here, I think it was called like "Are You Weird" or something like that. Are you weird? Earthling Ed. No, maybe it wasn't Earthling Ed. Are you weird? I don't know. Basically, it was saying like you should stand up for like specific issues. Um, and it was like saying like how like you should choose your battles to fight, essentially. Like and like
okay.
they were like basically saying like if you stand up for too many issues, you might be looked at as like a taboo out there figure who'd like, because if they don't agree with like one of your issues, they might look at your other issues the same as they look at the one issue they disagree with, and be like, well, I don't buy into say antinatalism, so
Hmm.
like that guy, he's a crazy antinatalist, so I'm not gonna even look into veganism because
Yeah.
because I don't buy into this whole like birth thing, like of course people should have kids, like
Hmm.
that's crazy. So
Yeah.
so therefore like I'm not even gonna look into like animal ethics because that must also be crazy. So I think a lot of
Yeah.
people in the vegan community have a lot of agreements with antinatalists, but I think a lot of them don't want to stand up for that per se, just because it is such an out there position.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I had a friend that my one friend that I mentioned briefly earlier that and killing themselves, they're naturally were an antinatalist. They didn't think we should bring people into existence. They just never
Hmm.
brought that up because it was like so controversial. They just
Yeah.
kind of would stick to like like veganism and stuff of that nature. So, I mean, I think it's kind of, I think there's a lot of people who are antinatalists who are also vegans who don't bring it up very much, which I think is a problem.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, we have a comment saying Earthling Ed is pro nature. Oh shit. Well, I guess there we have our answer there. Yeah, it's just, shit. Who was it that was having that interview with Alex O'Connor?
Who's Alex O'Connor?
Cosmic Skeptic.
Oh, that guy. Yeah.
Cosmic Skeptic, animal suffering. Who is that guy? Humane Hancock. Okay, that's who I was thinking of, not Earthling Ed. Humane Hancock. Yeah, I think Humane Hancock, he doesn't really specifically. I think he was the one who must have had like the video on people being weird. Like, are you looked at as weird or whatever? Yeah, I think Humane Hancock, he doesn't really explicitly mention antinatalism in his videos ever, but he's been on Alex O'Connor's show and said he would push the red button before, and so I feel like Humane Hancock is an EFIList slash antinatalist to some extent or another, but he just doesn't want to like ever like really bring that up because I mean, it's a really controversial opinion. So he'd basically rather like sell people on veganism rather than potentially tarnish his image and be looked at as like a crazy person. I'm completely don't give a shit about my image, so and I don't have an audience established already. So, I'm just kind of throwing my cards on the table in terms of my beliefs, but so I can completely understand people who already have like a vegan audience and then come to understand antinatalism and EFILism and then being like, oh shit, like that is really consistent, but damn, is that like absolutely existential as fuck and probably would not be handled very well by a majority of people.
Yeah.
He made a weird video about Skeptic. Yeah, he did make a weird video about Skeptic and his. I'm guessing you're talking about his response video to Alex O'Connor becoming no longer
Heard
vegan.
Heard about that.
Yeah, it looks. My take on Alex no longer being vegan is very similar to I think Humane Hancock's. Like I'm a consequentialist, so it's like I think Alex should remain vegan. Like there's no justification for really like not being vegan or vegetarian to some extent or another. Like being pescatarian just doesn't really cut it in my opinion. Like fish objectively feel pain.
Yeah.
But I do understand that he's a very, very, very valuable asset to the vegan community. He's very well spoken. I don't really vibe with his whole moral emotivism, like where it's just like, oh, all we're doing is just expressing ourselves, guys. Like, there's really nothing wrong with murder. We're just saying, I don't like murder. so.
Mm.
So I don't really. I don't. I think. I think like. His whole idea of emotivism is a little fucky wucky and screwed up. I disagree with it. But for the most part, I think Alex is a really valuable voice for the vegan community and just philosophy on a whole.
Yeah.
But he is a little bit. He is a little bit of a weird figure.
I mean, I think it's good that he doesn't. Some people try and do this where they will try and like actively justify it, like going on that type of murder that you mentioned. But at least he can like intellectually realize that it is pretty awful and all that. I've seen a few like antinatalist sort of channels and EFIList sort of channels. I don't know, maybe not EFIList, but they kind of say like, you plants have feelings, so therefore it's okay for us to like, continue the animal slaughter thing. But it's like, nah, man.
He went radio silent. Are you talking about Cosmic Skeptic, or are you talking about Humane Hancock? Let me see. Humane Hancock hasn't made a video in 1 month. You must be talking about Humane Hancock, because I think Cosmic Skeptic's made a few videos recently. But then again, Humane Hancock I don't think makes like a ton of videos, does he? Yeah, like his videos kind of skip every once in a while. It's like 1 month, 1 month, 2 month, 4 month, 5 month, 6 month, 9 month. He kind of every once in a while takes a break, I think, to like do like bigger projects and stuff like that when he comes to uploading on his channel. So I mean, it could be some drama with Alex or whatever and controversy. I don't really know. I don't have Twitter anymore, so I don't really pay attention to all the drama that happens in terms of the philosophy department. But oh, okay. I must have been talking about Alex then. Yeah, Alex went silent for a long time, but Alex started uploading videos again recently. So I think that Alex is valuable in the sense that he's convincing and he is still willing to argue in favor of veganism. So I mean, it took me 6 years to go vegan, and I argued for veganism very adamantly and strongly during that time period where I wasn't vegan. And I'd like to think I changed some minds during that period of time, even if I myself didn't, convert to veganism until recently. So I feel like a non-vegan voice can still be valuable for the vegan message. So
Yeah.
I mean, Cassier is vegetarian, and I think he said he supports veganism. So he's in a very similar boat to what I was, but even better than I was because I pretty much went from like eating Taco Bell every day to like one day I was just like, you know what? I'm gonna go to Red Robin and instead of buying burgers today, I'm gonna buy their veggie burger. And then I bought their veggie burger. I took a bite out of it and was like, that's pretty okay, I guess. And then the next day, I just went and instead of going and buying normal food from the grocery store, I just made sure to buy meat alternatives instead and dairy alternatives instead. And then I just didn't stop buying alternatives essentially. So you're doing way better than I am because you've already branched into vegetarianism, so you're already like halfway there. So
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, got to do a bit more. Yeah, I think one thing that made it easier for me to like go into vegetarianism is because like my culture. So it's like I'm Indian basically. And like there's a lot of like good vegetarian, like healthy vegetarian options. Um, but I think for a lot of people, like especially in the UK and maybe even America too, it's like they're so used to eating like steak or like chicken with something or sausages with something like and like like I can just have like lentils or something.
yeah, I think it's like if you really are into like the flavors of meat things, I recommend getting alternatives, especially for like the beginning of the transition. But when it comes to like later on down the line, it's like you can get protein from other sources like just as easily. Like I like to mishmash kind of a little bit, so I'll buy like say like vegan meatballs or something like that, and then I'll like buy like canned beans and canned corn, and I'll like grind it up in like a blender or something, and like make myself like some bean paste, and basically I can make myself like a bean burrito or whatever, and like have like some sliced up meatballs in there, and like add some flavor, some you throw some chili powder in with that bean paste stuff, and that tastes pretty good. So, like there's a lot of alternatives that like you can do once you transition. It makes it a lot easier. Like once you're midway through, and it becomes easier to just like get ideas for like things to cook that would be tasty and vegan. Just another roaster says, would someone listen to a non-vegan? Not sure. That is a good point. Because when I was a non-vegan, a lot of people would be like, I don't have to listen to you. You're not even vegan, blah, blah, blah. Like, you're just a hypocrite. Which is true. I was a hypocrite. But at the same time, it's like, just because you're being a hypocrite doesn't mean you're wrong, like someone who's like a murderer can attest that murder is wrong. A serial killer can be like, well, yeah, killing is wrong. I just do it for fun or something like that. Like someone people can realize that something is a wrong thing that they ought not to do and like still potentially do it, I think, to some extent or another. Like maybe not an extent of like for themselves, potentially not, but I mean, it's debatable. I mean, Aristotle said, like, you can't do wrong actions, but it's debatable. It's hard to avoid non-vegan products, like you like iced coffee and things like that. Yeah, you're not wrong. I mean, I love ice cream. If I liked coffee, it would be quite hard to avoid iced coffee with milk or creamer. Uh, Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a difficult lifestyle to be vegan. So, I mean, it's not difficult and it is difficult. Like, how do you say it? Like, as I mentioned earlier, like I work as a merchandiser and I go to grocery stores and stuff. And on Sundays they have free pizza and it smells fucking delicious. Okay, like it smells good. Like, goddamn. And it's like one of those things where like it's easy to be vegan because there's so many vegan products in the first world countries that we can just buy vegan products. I can make myself my own bean burritos by just like grinding up beans in a blender. It only takes literally 30 seconds to do that. Just chuck a bunch of beans in a blender, put some chili powder in there, some onion flakes in there, some garlic salt, and some corn, and then you just grind it up 30 seconds. You got yourself a bean burrito. Just chuck all that into a frying pan, and then within like 10 minutes, you got yourself a bean burrito, and you got enough for like 2 days. So, I mean, it's really, really easy and affordable to be vegan. But, yeah, as you said, there's so many non-vegan products just fucking laid out in front of you like everywhere just day to day that like it's just like now smell so fucking good, like like you're going by like KFC and smell like fried chicken, or like going by McDonald's and smell some McChickens, or like steak, ice cream, iced coffee, all that shit. Like it's just laid right in front of you. So in that sense, yeah, it's really difficult to be vegan because like the whole entire world is like basically shaming you for being vegan, and or basically saying that you've gone too far and that you're like wrong for shaming others for not being vegan. So yeah, basically the whole world's against you, and like the whole world's just like offering you things to like buy that are not vegan, like just join the dark side. We have XYZ. So it's like, yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
Some unknown pizza vendor. I will duly note that I will not order vegan pizza from Domino's then. Hmm. Yeah, I don't know if there's very many vegan pizza places around here. Maybe like Papa John's might have something or something like that. But I almost feel like at that point it's probably like almost more affordable just to buy my own like pizza crust and get myself like vegan cheese and make myself my own pizza maybe. Like maybe not, but I almost feel like it would be.
I think it would, yeah. They can be really expensive, their pizzas.
They can, yeah. Yeah, 100%. Like if yeah, I imagine like it would cost me at least $20 to get a vegan pizza, probably like a size large. And then I imagine like buying the crust itself would be like from a store like $5. Get yourself like a whole packet of vegan cheese, another $5. And then get yourself a whole entire packet of vegan vegan meatball and or like pepperoni or something like that, and that would probably cost you like $5 also. It should be like $15 plus you're probably getting way more than, you know, if you were to buy just a single pizza. So yeah, it's probably a lot more cheaper to just make your own. Me doing the economics of vegan pizza buying live on.
Have you ever heard of that guy called what's he called? It's something experimentalist. Have you ever seen that guy?
Is he an antinatalist?
Yeah, he is.
Is he the one that is a dad? I believe he was a dad. He's an antinatalist dad, but he's kind of balding a little bit. He does like a lot of street stuff with like a vocal thing. He's like he yells a lot, like just like.
That's the guy. Yeah.
Yeah, I know him. What about him?
No, nah, like I just think some of his videos are funny, man. When he goes out in public and he's just like, it don't even have to be about antinatalism or anything. It could just be about like the drug laws that we've got, and he's just like, I saw this video and he's like, why are you guys doing the most like boring drug ever, like alcohol? Like you should be doing shrooms. Like, come on, guys.
I honestly love his channel. It's really hilarious. I mean, there's some things I disagree with a little bit because, I mean, like, when it comes to COVID, like, I don't think COVID was that much of a threat. But at the same time, I do think we have duties to each other. My bad. We have duties to each other to, like, not spread disease as much as possible, you know? Like, it's just, like, you know, something we ought to do is not, like, get dickheads and spread disease. Like, we should wear masks and we should, like, try to prevent the spread of disease. So, like, some things that I had disagreements with him about, and like when it comes down to it, I kind of don't like it when people mishmash, like kind of like what that one guy said that was talking about earlier, where like if you grab onto too many ideas, you can be looked at as like weird. And I think it's really tragic that is the case. You know that you can't like that all your beliefs can't be looked at independently for what they are. But people do tie like the messenger to the message, so it's kind of unfortunate. So the fact that he's like going out there like yelling a bunch of things about COVID, but also at the same time being in the same areas yelling things about antinatalism, kind of makes me a little turned off to his channel.
Yeah,
but I still like his work overall. I think he's a fun guy. So
yeah. Great. That's it, yeah, social experimentalist.
just another YouTuber. Do you want to hop on the live stream, by the way? I mean, I could paste a link in there for you. But feel free to get just interacting in the comment section. That was you like you're doing great. Love interacting with chat.
Yeah, did you guys do anything for 420? I don't know if just another YouTuber smokes. But...
not particularly. 420 was no, I don't think so. It's kind of I marched that day. Not I marched, but like walked with like my sign that says "Abortion is an act of love" and "Birth is the catalyst of all suffering and death." I basically just walked in front of Planned Parenthood to counter protest the pro-lifers that always walk in front of it. And other than that, yeah, I saw a few stoners walk by me, and they were like baked as shit, and they're like, "Yeah, bro," and I'm like, "Yeah." So other than that, I basically got high, and then I walked in front of Planned Parenthood for like an hour and a half or something like that. So that was pretty much like the most exciting thing I did in 420. Other than that, I just smoked, gamed, did a little bit of homework. So
that's cool. Yo, if you've ever seen that like Stop Having Kids channel, when they do it, some people get really like up in arms about it. Like
they do. I'm waiting for death threats. I haven't got a death threat yet, but I have had people like come up to me and like say that they're gonna expose my evil deeds and like to like look to
Ooh.
Jesus in the sky and stuff like that, and like
Shit.
wild shit. Like I've had some wild people come up to me and have like some weird conversations. Like I've had like people be like, there's like there's babies that are like want to come into Earth and you're denying them access by getting abortions, like straight up like yeah, like all that crazy shit. So
Yeah,
I've
God.
talked to some wild characters, man, but
Yeah, yeah.
haven't got any death threats yet. I'm waiting.
Fingers crossed. Yeah.
Thinking about buying life insurance one of these days because I'm thinking about buying not buying, but I guess it's kind of like buying. Yeah, you have to get like a solicitor's license to like walk to door, essentially, to talk to people.
Okay.
I've been thinking about potentially like printing out flyers for stophavingkids.org and walking door to door. And honestly, probably should buy life insurance. That way I don't get fucking like shot. Or if I do get shot, at least I can like have my life insurance go to like a charity. So
Yeah. Fuck. Oh my gosh, man.
look at the sky, nothing there. Basically, the lady that I talked to 2 days ago was just like, look at the sky, and I'm like, I looked up and I'm like, what? Like, what are you talking about? She's like, look up. She's like, you'll believe. And I'm like, I literally was wearing sunglasses to like help her protect my face / identity, so I'm like less recognizable because I have like distinct tattoos and stuff. So it's like I cover my tattoos and wear like a hat and stuff, so like it's less recognizable. Because I go to a Christian college and I don't want to get kicked out. So, um, so yeah, I mean, she was just like, "Look at the sky." So I basically just stared straight at the sun with my sunglasses, and I just like looked at her, and I was just like, "The sun." And I'm like, "It does give us life, doesn't it not?" And I'm like, "It also gives me skin cancer." And I'm like,
Yeah, I went to a Christian sixth form college after high school, and they were doing this like ceremony where they were like lighting a candle and they were like saying how it's like connected to Christianity somehow. And then this guy's phone went off and it was like Soldier Boy Tell Him ringtone. And it was just mad, like it went on for ages before he finally turned it off and everyone was just laughing. Like, that's crazy.
basic. We're getting on the 3 hour mark here.
Shit.
Yeah, I might cut the stream off pretty soon here. I mean, I'm glad you came on the stream, Kaz. I mean, you were awesome to interact with, and I'm glad you asked questions.
Thanks a lot, Brant. Appreciate it. Appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, of course. I'm gonna probably stream relatively, not daily, but relatively daily, just because I mean, just as an F-list, it's like I have a duty to reduce suffering as much as possible, and it's like, what else am I supposed to do with my time besides like try to talk to people and like interact with the community and other people outside of the community. So
Yeah, I feel you, man. I'm trying to get through to more people on like Facebook and stuff because I've got a lot of like good people I care about on Facebook, like just all the people that I've met throughout my life. But it's just it's about going about it in a way that's like palatable to the audience. So I'm not sure on that one how to do that.
me neither, my dude. Me neither. That's why I'm basically just lay my thoughts out on the table as honestly as I can. And I'm like, hopefully some people buy into it and like what I'm saying. I don't really know. I mean, my audience basically is mental illness of like antisocial personality disorder and the FLS community because I think there's a lot of connection between different various cluster B and other personality disorders and understanding that life is like really fucked up and not worth continuing or at least perpetuating.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, man. It's an uphill struggle, man. But yeah, we gotta do it, right? We gotta do something.
But yeah, thank you for coming on to the stream, and I'll probably close it out here in a minute or two. But do you have any questions regarding me or life or anything that you'd want to have my solid advice giving talent to inform you on?
Gosh, I just wanted to ask you a bit because you said you were pro-mortalist. I think in one of your videos that you posted.
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
just wondering, what are your exact views on that, like checking out and all that stuff? Like, is that like in your plans, or I don't know?
I don't plan to commit late exit for at least till I'm 25. I'm gonna stick to my promise that I made to my friend for sure.
Cool.
After that, I don't really know. I'm a negative utilitarian, so when it comes to pro-mortalism, I believe that we have a duty to prevent as much suffering as possible. And I believe when you exit, you prevent a large amount of suffering because obviously we cause a bunch of suffering by like consuming other beings to maintain our own existence. But at the same time, we can prevent a lot more suffering, I believe, by convincing other people to not procreate and to not breed animals into existence and to hopefully try to extinct animals in the future. So when it comes down to it, I think an egoistic perspective, all beings are better off ceasing existence, and in that sense, I'm a pro-mortalist. I think all beings are better off not existing. But I'm not a pro-mortalist in the sense that I believe everybody has an obligation to cease existing as soon as possible, because I believe we have an obligation to reduce net suffering before we have an obligation to reduce our own suffering. So that's basically what I believe when it comes to pro-mortalism, if that answers your question.
Yeah, thanks, man. That makes sense.
Yeah, no problem. Are you a pro-mortalist or?
I don't know about the actual term pro-mortalism, as if like it's just better for everyone to kill themselves as soon as possible. But I do think just life can get to a point where it's so bad that it's kind of in your interest to check out, you could say.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But you don't necessarily think that everybody at all points in their life it would be in their interests to check out?
I really don't know about that. There is that argument of like risk of some really horrific things happening to you and stuff, and you could avoid all that by doing the pro-mortalist thing. But I don't know. I haven't thought about it deeply enough to come to a conclusion on that, I think.
You watched YouTube videos on pro-mortalism, or?
I've watched Blazer's YouTube videos about it. Yeah, and he gives a lot of good arguments for it. But I just think as well that like people are, it's a hard sell for most people. Like, it's just a really hard sell. I don't know. I don't know. Like, what if you've got pleasure in front of you and you've got all these enjoyable things, to do, or it'd be hard to convince the person, or just check out, man. It's not worth it. Like, I don't know. It's kind of.
I think it's a matter of convincing them of kind of like the whole Buddhistic idea of like, well, it just means sooner you go, the more risk you're avoiding. Indeed, yeah, and the whole like Buddhist perspective, I guess, of like all desires are essentially unnecessary, and that pleasures are derived from fulfilling desires, and that essentially once you fulfill a desire, you're either going to be unsatisfied with the result of the fulfillment of your desire, and or a new desire is just going to take its place soon afterwards, which you'll need to meet. So it's just like inherently life is just a endless chase of like the wind. It's like it's hevel essentially.
Hmm.
Um, I guess there's various ways you can go about convincing that. If they're Christian, you can point to, I guess, Ecclesiastes, which is a really good point, part of the Bible to point to. I don't know if you know what Ecclesiastes is.
Yeah, Ecclesiastes. I think
Yeah, Ecclesiastes, yeah.
I'm gonna look that up tonight after this. I think.
Ecclesiastes has a lot of stuff about how life is essentially just pointless, chasing the wind. It's basically just like Earth is basically a place that like God put us here to realize that separation from Himself is like a bad thing, and that like we want to be unified with God, and that any separation is like its own horror. So like basically like Ecclesiastes is about how like life itself is like a whole game of like chasing desires just to realize that desire itself is a trick, and that you want to instead sacrifice all your own desires to become unified with God's will. So Ecclesiastes is essentially a point in the Bible where it's like just saying that like life is complete dog shit and like a useless game. So I think a lot of people are Christian, so like I think Ecclesiastes is a good point to try to convince people, at least my opinion. But then again, there's a ton of Christians that will like be like, well, you just don't understand the Old Testament, you just don't understand the Bible and the whole context. So who knows? But
yeah, right. Yeah, cool, man. Thanks, man.
yeah, no problem. Well, I'm gonna close out the stream, but yeah, you have a great night.
Yeah, and you guys too.
Thank you. Ciao.
Bye.